What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you were not counting on Duke. Congratulations to North Carolina. In all seriousness, the Duke Blue Devils, they always kind of remind me, at least, of Jason Garrett, Tony Romo, Jason Witten, DeMarco Murray when they would take those trips to watch the games. But maybe you're a UNC fan, maybe you're a Kansas fan, who knows? But today we're actually going to be kind of going back in time and looking at whether or not we believe that Dallas Cowboys can draft first-round talent. This is a big talking point generally every year around this time because the NFL draft is now less than a month away. And I think when we look at the names of who the Cowboys have taken in the first round over the last decade, we say that's a lot of success. And we say that's a lot of Pro Bowls. And we say it's a lot of this and that and whatever. And so we wanted to take a little bit of a deeper dive as far as, again, the last 10 picks that the Dallas Cowboys have made in the first round specifically. So we go all the way back to 2010. The last 10 picks does include that year. Shout out to, of course, Dez Bryant, wide receiver out of Oklahoma State, who the Dallas Cowboys took at 24 overall, where they're selecting this year. Dez was actually the last Cowboy that was taken at 24 overall. Dallas did not originally have the 24th overall pick in 2010. They did trade into it, but nevertheless took a future Ring of Honor wide receiver with that pick. Dez blossomed, as we all know, into an amazing wide receiver. That 2012 to 2014 stretch was among the very best, really, 3-year stretches that we've seen in NFL history. Dez's career obviously is a lot more than that and was definitely very productive, but the end is something that was bitter, and we certainly wish that there had been a better story there at the very end. But ultimately, I don't know how you don't call this pick a success for the Cowboys. It was a little bit contentious at the time. If you recall, Roy Williams was still a wide receiver for the Cowboys, and Miles Austin was still hanging around. Dez very, very, very infamously wouldn't carry Roy's shoulder pads and all this stuff. Dez was very different, and I think that he was very needed for the Cowboys at the time. A lightning rod of emotion, and we saw that play itself in and out week after week after week after week once he became an established veteran on the team. A home run of a pick. And honestly, that 2010 draft class, the Cowboys took Dez Bryant in the first round and took Sean Lee in the second. So a very, very, very promising, sort of run there in Wade Phillips' last season as the team's head coach, which takes us to 2011, the first draft that Jason Garrett was officially the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, and when the rebuild began. The Cowboys took Tyron Smith with the 9th overall pick. Obviously, they were very bad in 2010. We don't have to talk all the way about it, but Wade was fired. Jason Garrett took over as interim head coach, blah, 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 blah. But Tyron Smith, again, the building block, the first building block, the foundational cornerstone piece of the offensive line that the Cowboys would go on to build throughout the first round, and has been an amazing player really from day one. He was so young. He was 20 years old when he was drafted. That was such a big, sort of positive in his campaign. It wasn't like there were any reasons to dislike Tyron Smith at the time, but he didn't even turn 21 until December of his rookie year. And so he has been amazing. We know the injury issues, but there's no question about it. Tyron is a future Pro Football Hall of Famer. It does not get any better than this. And yes, he has had some injury issues as of late, but I mean, he's, in the double-digit seasons at this point in time. That's going to happen. You're not going to play at his position, as well as he does every single game for a decade or more in the NFL. This game is a battle of attrition, and it takes its toll on everybody. Let's go to 2012, where the Dallas Cowboys got active in the trade market again. I mentioned that Tyron was the foundational cornerstone piece for the offensive line. The Cowboys decided to address defense in 2012. Now, before they took Morris Claiborne with the 6th overall pick, which they traded up for, amazingly, they did not have to surrender any first-round draft capital in following seasons. The Cowboys, we talk about this a lot, had just signed Brandon Carr in free agency, veteran cornerback at the time coming from the Kansas City Chiefs. And so the idea was that Carr and Claiborne were going to take care of the Cowboys secondary for years to come. Morris Claiborne was very, 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 very famously graded so high on the Cowboys draft board, one of the highest draft prospects they had ever graded, and was highly touted coming out of LSU. And there was no reason not to believe that Morris Claiborne was going to become something amazing in the NFL. Obviously, that did not happen. Obviously, Morris Claiborne, people throw out the term bust a lot, and I think that relative to expectation, it's fair to say that Mo was a bust. Now, that expectation is sort of unique. Did you really think he was going to turn into Deion Sanders? I don't know. I don't know that would be fair to throw onto any cornerback. I mean, a lot of people threw that expectation on Jalen Ramsey as an example, and he's been very good, but has he been Deion Sanders? No, because nobody's Deion Sanders. Mo was a fine player in the NFL, won a Super Bowl with the Kansas City Chiefs. We actually had him here on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel in the lead up to the Super Bowl that the Chiefs beat the 49ers in. So good friend of BTB, but just didn't work out. And again, this was, this 2012 offseason really taught the Cowboys a lot of lessons, and it would be nice to see them deviate from some of them. It would be nice to see the Cowboys say, you know what, we learned those lessons, and we're going to adjust, but we're never, we're not going to just stay away from those things forever. As we've talked about, the Cowboys don't spend in free agency the way they did on Brandon Carr that offseason. We haven't seen them trade up the way they did for Morris Claiborne this particular year, climbing all the way to 6 overall. Now, to be fair, you shouldn't be trading up into every single draft, and the Cowboys have drafted well, and we'll get to the rest of the picks, but don't be afraid to be aggressive. Just because you got burned one time does not mean that you should never touch the pot on the stove ever again. But Mo Claiborne, not the finest moment. Again, probably the worst. Actually, not the worst, but the second worst pick that we're going to talk about today. We got a nice little run here. 2013, the Dallas Cowboys traded back. This is actually the last time before last year that Dallas moved back in the draft, and they took Wisconsin center Travis Frederick. This draft was very famously the one that taught us that the Cowboys had absolutely no interest in defensive tackles high in the first round. We've learned that lesson very painfully ever since. Starlo Tulele was somebody who a lot of people wanted the Cowboys to draft. That did not happen, but Dallas traded back with San Francisco, passed on safeties again, not something that they are ever interested in doing, and picked up an extra third-round pick in the process, and ultimately took Wisconsin center Travis Frederick. A lot of people had takes that aged very poorly after this. A lot of people said not a first-round talent, not this, not that, whatever. Travis Frederick was amazing, was an absolutely amazing, arguably the best center in the NFL while playing for the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously battled against Guillain-Barré syndrome in 2018, missed that entire season, but returned in 2019, to play his standard level of performance, which is really impressive, before retiring in 2020. And so I again, especially when you factor in the trade back here, this was an incredible evaluation by the Dallas Cowboys. And I think, people say that not everybody gives the Cowboys enough credit sometimes, and I think we live in these extremes where the Cowboys are either really good or really bad. There's evidence of both cases. It's almost as if throughout life you're going to make mistakes and have successes. And this was an incredible success by the Cowboys. They read the room, they read the draft, they read their peers, they knew that they could trade back and still land a player that they wanted, a player like Travis Frederick, who really stabilized that offensive line, was very critical for the last couple of seasons in Tony Romo and the beginning seasons of Dak Prescott under center for Dallas. So, an A-plus sort of proposition. It doesn't get much better than that. Travis, very famously, also an A-plus student at Wisconsin. I'm getting a little emotional there myself. Anyway, let's move on. If A plus is the best, this is like A quadruple plus. Zach Martin. I said the last example of Dallas trading back. A lot of people thought they were going to trade up in 2014, but Dallas stayed put at 16, and a lot of people, the draft in question. This 2014 draft class, very impressive throughout the NFL when you look at it as a whole. Aaron Donald kind of headlines it now, but Mike Evans in there, Sammy Watkins, Odell Beckham Jr., obviously a lot of people who have played for the Rams. Jadeveon Clowney was the number 1 overall pick. Who could forget Blake Bortles, Teddy Bridgewater taken in this draft, as well as Johnny Manziel. I am a fighting Texas Aggie, so this was a really emotional time for me. A lot of Cowboys fans, I think, at this point, this was 1 year removed in 2014 from Tony Romo getting his most recent contract extension with the Cowboys, and a lot of people wanted Johnny, and he did fall all the way to 16. And again, we've heard the stories about Jerry and Steven and blah blah, the wrestling. Who cares? Whatever. But the Cowboys passed. The Cowboys passed on Johnny Manziel in favor of taking Zach Martin, and a lot of people thought this was really silly. And Zach was truly the best player on the board. And if I haven't said, by the way, here, you might be confused. The asterisks along players' names denotes a Pro Bowl selection. So Zach obviously has been at the Pro Bowl basically every season of his career. And again, this is arguably... this is one of the very best draft picks in Dallas Cowboys history. Is it the best? I don't know. It's difficult to top Bob Lilly, obviously, given what that meant to the franchise. It's difficult to top Troy Aikman because he's a quarterback, and again, what that spurred for the franchise and the dynasty of the 1990s. But this is, I think this is maybe the very best Dallas Cowboys draft pick since Troy Aikman. It's difficult. It's difficult to come up with one that's better. Zach is I mean, among the very best offensive linemen, among the very best guards who've ever played in the NFL. We've seen, again, that battle of attrition kind of take its toll on him over the last couple of years, but there's no question about it. And this really, this 2013-2014 experience with Travis Frederick, and specifically the trade back in 2013 and then the taking of Zach Martin in 2014, really kind of did a lot to, remake our impression of the Cowboys front office from a drafting perspective. Again, you've heard the take a lot that the Cowboys are a very good drafting team. A lot of the foundation for that idea was built in this window of time because the Cowboys rebounded very nicely from trading up to select Morris Claiborne, and we're very reasonable, we're very calm, and we're very confident in these selections. And they did, establish one of the very best offensive lines in the NFL for a good little run there, and a big part of it was Zach Martin and his dominance and his continued dominance at right guard. This takes us to, I actually want to take a break here before we move on, because again, the idea that is thrown out a lot around this time of year, and when we have conversations, you talk to somebody and maybe you're upset that the Cowboys aren't doing anything in free agency, and you're saying, it's so frustrating, I wish they would do more, Steven, this and that, whatever. And a lot of people generally respond and say, well, the draft hasn't happened yet, just be patient, just wait, etc. The Cowboys are always going to get a star in the first round, and that is generally true. The Cowboys generally do get a star in the first round, but what does a star mean? Does a star mean a very good player? Does a star mean somebody's name who we know, right? Is Morris Claiborne a star? Probably not, like relative to what we want and need a star to be. And I think that we overrate, and this isn't trying to be critical, but I do think that we overrate what the Cowboys have done in the first round from 2015 on. And we're going to take a look at the list, but I think that this idea still lives and lies with what they did from 2010 through 2014. Again, let's take a look at these. I mean, we're talking 5 different draft picks here. These are 5 amazing first-round draft picks, except for Morris Claiborne, obviously. You've got Dez Bryant, and again, obviously a Pro Bowl selection right there. Tyron Smith, Pro Bowl selection. Morris Claiborne, not a Pro Bowl selection. Travis Frederick, and Zach Martin. You drafted in a 5-year span 4 dudes who all went to multiple Pro Bowls. That is incredibly impressive. Nobody's going to deny that. Okay, great. Amazing 5-year stretch, but we're talking about the last decade, and that's the first half of the last decade. What about the second half? It's definitely not as impressive. But 2015, Byron Jones did make it to a Pro Bowl, and so, if that's your evaluation, then that's fine. And I don't know that Byron is so difficult to evaluate because the Cowboys didn't properly utilize him, right? You can certainly make that argument. Is he a corner? Is he a safety? Blah, 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 whatever. And there's no question that Byron is an amazing athlete. And so the Cowboys definitely selected a very talented player. So, maybe you don't knock the evaluation process. Maybe you just knock the coaching aspect of this. And that's fine. This is, like I said, a very unique thing. But he was the first-round pick in 2015, 27 overall. The Cowboys, I've said many, many, many times, if you have ever followed me, up to this point, that they kind of tried to pick up where they left off in 2015 from Dez catching it at Lambeau Field. That was kind of how they built their team for a little while, as if they could pick back up there. And then, like we say a lot, you can't do that. You have to climb the mountain all the way over again. And Byron, again, just never really kind of clicked. It never really worked until Chris Richard landed at the very end, and kind of unlocked Byron. He was kind of the first person to say, hey, this dude's an elite talent. Let's use him at cornerback. And how that didn't happen throughout the majority of Byron's time in Dallas obviously is difficult to figure out. But if we're grading it, if we go back here, and let's kind of very quickly do this. If we're grading these, Dez is an A, right? A+ if you really want. At the very floor of a grade here is an A. Tyron Smith, is an A+. Mo Claiborne's probably like a C. Travis Frederick's an A+. Zach Martin's an A+. So that takes us to Byron. Byron's probably a B. And like a flat B, right? Not a B+. Because again, the evaluation was fair. The evaluation was legitimate. And you got this guy all the way at 27. And so maybe you want to slap on that plus. But it didn't land, and so it's difficult to feel supremely great about it. And obviously, he left. He's one of the very few first round picks outside of Morris Claiborne, obviously, who left the Cowboys. In fact, I think this is important. That's we'll go back. I know we're bouncing around, but hey, we're in the interest of having important conversations. Dez Bryant, his second contract was with the Dallas Cowboys. That very famous, back and forth between him and DeMarco Murray, holding out but showing up despite holding out, blah, blah, blah. But his second contract with the Dallas Cowboys. Tyron Smith's second contract with the Dallas Cowboys. Morris Claiborne's second contract technically was with the Dallas Cowboys. They did not pick up Morris Claiborne's 5th-year option entering 2016, but they did sign him back to to a 1-year deal. Entering 2015. They did sign him back to a 1-year deal. So he did get a 1-year deal with the Cowboys after his rookie contract ended. So his second deal technically was with the team. Obviously, Travis Frederick's second contract with the Cowboys. Zach Martin's second contract with the Dallas Cowboys. Byron's was with the Miami Dolphins. The Cowboys let this one walk. So that in and of itself kind of shows you that they themselves didn't exactly feel like it was a great utilization of a first-round pick. And to be very fair to the idea, Byron plays the cornerback position, which is a very high-price commodity, right? And so the Cowboys aren't going to pay somebody unless they believe he is truly elite. And the fact that he did not become truly elite, is kind of an indictment on the pick. Now, he was the 27th overall pick. How often does the 27th overall pick become truly elite? This is where the draft is so fascinating and interesting and fun, as it goes back and forth, round and round, all sorts of different variables and pieces that we use to put together the whole puzzle. And so, again, I think a B is fair here, which takes us to 2016. If you want to talk about difficult evaluations, this is certainly one of them. Zeke Elliott taken with the highest resource that we are talking about here today in terms of where these picks are slotted. Again, Mo Claiborne taken at 6, but the Cowboys held the 4th overall pick. They traded up to take Mo Claiborne at 6, and they had the 4th overall pick by being so bad in 2015. Jared Goff went number 1 overall to the new look Los Angeles Rams at the time. Carson Wentz went number 2 overall to the Philadelphia Eagles. And Joey Bosa went number 3 overall to what was then the San Diego Chargers, now obviously the Los Angeles Chargers. Jalen Ramsey recently appeared on the Pivot podcast and talked about how he was told by the Cowboys that had he made it to 4 overall, they were going to take him. A lot of people thought that the Chargers were going to take Jalen Ramsey, which was going to kind of set the Cowboys up very easily to take Zeke Elliott. But as mentioned, the Chargers took Joey Bosa, who no Cowboys fan wanted at the time, if you have been a part of Cowboys Twitter for that long. And Dallas, there was a fork in the road, and the Cowboys went one direction. Now, Zeke has been a fantastic player. He's been awesome for the Cowboys. He's been such a face for the Cowboys and their success. That 2016 season, among the very best seasons that any running back has ever had in the history of the NFL. This isn't Zeke's fault, but he is a running back, and the Cowboys had the 4th overall pick in the NFL draft. And, however you feel about Zeke, because this subject stirs up a lot of emotions and feelings for people, the reality is that was in no way the best utilization of that resource. He's been an amazing player for the Cowboys, and that's true, but we've talked so many times and so many people have done so much work to highlight the fact that, the catchphrase for the movement is that running backs don't matter. Running backs definitely matter, but they just matter a lot less than other high-priced positions. Like we talked about, Byron Jones, if you're not going to pay an elite corner, what's the best way to get an elite corner then? It's through the draft. It's a player on a rookie contract. So you had Jalen Ramsey sitting there right in front of you, and, the Cowboys passed. And, hindsight says the Cowboys should have taken Jalen Ramsey at 4 overall and come back in the second round and taken Derrick Henry instead of taking Zeke Elliott and Jalen Smith. We know, obviously, the way that the Jalen contract worked out. But Cowboys took Zeke Elliott. He's been a great player. I think you can give it a B+ if you really want to. Again, I think, we talked about this on a recent roundtable here on the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. If you play out time the same exact way, Tony Romo gets hurt in the preseason and Kellen Moore's already broken his ankle. If rookie Dak Prescott has to enter the fold with Darren McFadden in the backfield, right? Alfred Morris, and those things would happen later. So would-be veteran, does Dak Prescott have the same success in 2016? The Cowboys have the same success? Does it leave them in a position where they can easily keep Dak Prescott at quarterback when Tony Romo returns to full health? I don't know. I don't think so. There used to be this big conversation about, is Dak only Dak because of Zeke? And that take has really aged poorly. But I think that Dak was certainly Dak because of Zeke, at least in 2016, right? There's no question about it. And a big reason for that, as we know, was the success of the offensive line that we just talked about, and so it was just kind of a perfect storm in that sense, and that, again, that's what makes the draft and football and life in so many ways so fascinating. But if I told you that if the Cowboys take Jalen Ramsey, Dak Prescott might not become the franchise quarterback of the Cowboys, you might say it was worth it to take Zeke. That's fair, and I can't argue with that, but I think the pick in and of itself is a B+ sort of proposition, but not the worst pick on this list, because man alive, 2017, the Dallas Cowboys. This one hurts because while the Cowboys passed on Jalen Ramsey and took Zeke, they still took Zeke, and Zeke, again, has had moments. The Cowboys passed on TJ Watt, as we all know, and took Taco Charlton out of Michigan with the 28th overall pick. This did not go well. I said that Byron's second contract was with the Miami Dolphins and not the Dallas Cowboys. He, at the very least, played out his rookie contract with the Cowboys, including his fifth-year option. Taco Charlton was cut in his third season before his rookie contract even ran out. This was a volatile pick. I mean, this people hated this pick from the beginning, and people were really, unfair, I think, to Taco. He was not a great player, but I think a lot of Cowboys fans were out on him from the very beginning, and a lot of people just looked to kind of confirm their priors, which was unfortunate for him. But man, just a failure of a pick. There's no doubt about it. And you're picking at 28. I mean, you're way back in the first round, and so you're not expecting to land a superstar. But the fact that T.J. Watt was there certainly hurts this with the benefit of hindsight. There's no question about it. The worst pick the Cowboys have made in the first round, maybe this century. I mean, it's very, very possible, especially when you factor in that T.J. Watt was available, which is difficult to fully inject into the equation, but it is true nevertheless. So a failure right there. 2018, a very telegraphed pick, Leighton Vander, who is, just like Morris Claiborne, returning to the Cowboys on a one-year deal after not having his fifth-year option picked up. So in that weird way, not a failure, but not a high success. And a lot of people are saying, the Cowboys had Leighton's fifth-year option last year been picked up, he'd be on the books for $9 million this year, and they're only paying him $3 million, so they're geniuses. Yeah, that's not like a good look. The fact that you can have him back for so low, for such a cheap value, speaks to who he is, and that speaks to who you drafted. The Cowboys, with the 19th overall pick in 2018, took the linebacker out of Boise State, and there's no real player that they passed on here that hurts. Vita Vea was somebody a lot of people love. Derwin James was somebody a lot of people love, but those were never factors, at least for the Cowboys. And so, as far as the being on the clock, and I mean, he's been fine. I mean, again, if we're grading Byron as a B, then maybe this has to be a B minus. Maybe it's still a B because he had. I think Leighton had a better season, that 2018 season, obviously, than Byron ever had for the Cowboys. I mean, Leighton was such an important part of that 2018 season. With Amari Cooper being traded this offseason, we've talked a lot about that 2018 year and when the Cowboys traded for him, which we'll get to in a moment, and how Amari kind of saved things and unlocked Dak Prescott. The Cowboys, you will recall, were 3-4 when they traded for Amari Cooper. They lost their very next game, a Monday Night Football contest, to the Tennessee Titans. Jason Witten was actually in the booth in AT&T Stadium, where Leighton was drafted, by the way. This was that draft. And the Cowboys lost and fell to 3-5. And then they had a 5-game stretch that was insanely difficult. They played Philadelphia, Atlanta, Washington, New Orleans, Philadelphia, and I remember on one of our shows on the Blog on the Boys podcast that worked the 750, myself and Tony Casillas, we thought the Cowboys were going to lose all 5 of those games. They wound up winning all 5 in a row, and the first of them was on the road in Philadelphia, and Leighton Vander had an interception early in the game and was just such an important kind of part of that turnaround, that turnaround with Jalen Smith. I mean, they were both so good in 2018, and Chris Richard's involvement and influence, etc. And it really all kind of started to come together, and you really kind of started to believe in this defense way more than we ever had at that time. Now, obviously, last season really helped in that regard, but I think that Leighton, for that reason, maybe gets a B+. I'm willing to bump that up, but then obviously injuries took a toll, and it just never happened for him again. And the reason why it's hard, but you have to be so harsh on the Cowboys for that, is that was a known thing. He was such a risk from that perspective, and that has only played itself out, unfortunately. But hopefully Leighton is solid for the Cowboys this coming season. 2019, as mentioned, the Cowboys did not have a first-round pick. They sent it to the then Oakland Raiders in exchange for Amari Cooper, who they just traded away this offseason. I think that was an A move. I know that Amari's gone, but he did, kind of like Zeke Elliott, help you realize who Dak Prescott is. And just for that reason alone, it was worth it. But Amari definitely gave us some good times. 2020, the Cowboys kind of effectively spent back-to-back first-round picks on wide receivers. CeeDee Lamb, this brings us to a very interesting point where we're at in our current moment, fell to the Cowboys at 17 overall. You will recall that 2 years ago, a lot of people in the lead up to the draft process thought that Kayvon Chason from LSU was going to be the pick for the Cowboys at edge rusher. This was their first full season without Taco Charlton, so, kind of looking to rework that defensive end room. This was before Randy Gregory's situation was fully cleared to the point that he could be available for, a duration of a season. And so that made some sense, but CeeDee Lamb fell, and that was so fascinating when the Cowboys were on the clock to see kind of what they were going to do. Would they stick with what they needed? That was the fork on the road they were looking at the time. K'Lavon Chaisson filled a need, or did they follow the board? Did they go with best player available? CeeDee Lamb happened to fall to them, and wide receiver was a need, don't get me wrong, but what would they choose? And they truly went best player available. And they did that all throughout that draft, which was a really great draft for the Cowboys. Second round, they took Trayvon Diggs. Third round, took Neville Gallimore. I mean, that draft really kind of spoke to a BPA sort of mindset. And that was why a lot of people had a lot of, high hopes for the Cowboys in 2020. But the jury's still out, I think, on fully grading this pick. I think for now you give it a B plus A. CeeDee hasn't become like the alpha wide receiver that we fully expected, but Amari Cooper was around, so it's kind of difficult when that role isn't totally available. It's disappointing that he hasn't yet, but the opportunity is there right now, so I think we absolutely have to believe that he can get it done here in 2022, which takes us to last year's first-round pick, Micah Parsons. I mean, how do you I was sending a message in the background, by the way. So, sometimes you get to see how the sausage is made here. A plus. I mean, I mentioned that Zach Martin, arguably the best player the Cowboys have drafted this century. Micah has a case to challenge for that someday. It's too early, and I do not want to take away anything from what Micah Parsons did. But Zach has just been that great. It's more about Zach Martin than it is Micah Parsons. But Micah, who fell to the Cowboys as well, and this got really, really, really lucky. We have 19 on there. The Cowboys actually took him at 12. Cowboys had so again, you get to see how the sausage is made. Sometimes we print the wrong graphic, whatever. We don't print anything. Does anybody print anything, by the way, anymore? But anyway, the Cowboys held the 10th overall pick last year, and were wiped out. If you were with us during our live draft shows, you recall that as soon as J.C. Horn went to Carolina at 8, we started to panic a little bit, and we were all wondering whether or not Denver would take Justin Fields with the 9th overall pick. That has aged wonderfully for the Broncos now that they have Patrick Surtain, who looks like an up-and-coming, wonderful cornerback in the NFL, and the fact that they got Russell Wilson this offseason, obviously. But that set the Cowboys up for DEFCON 1. We were panicking, and I remember asking all of you, I said, what should we do? What should the Cowboys do right here? And the comment section just flooded. Trade back. And the Cowboys did. They traded back from 10 to 12, again, not 19, and with the Philadelphia Eagles, and in the process sent Devontae Smith to the Eagles. The New York Giants wanted Devontae Smith and ultimately had to trade back themselves out of that 11th spot to 20, with the Chicago Bears, who took Justin Fields, and the Cowboys then at 12 with the third-round pick in their pocket, thanks to the Philadelphia Eagles, took Micah Parsons. Now, to be very, 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 very fair, okay, Micah is wonderful. He was evaluated and regarded as an off-ball linebacker. The 10th or 12th overall pick is not a great utilization of resources in that regard, okay? You don't spend such a high-priced commodity on that kind of position. It worked out because Micah has become a unicorn. Micah has become a pass rusher linebacker. I mean, just like all defensive superstar extraordinaire. So in that sense, he's worth the first overall pick if you have that. Like if somebody's going to be that all the time, then you can't put a price on it. But that was not the evaluation at the time. Now, maybe you're a supreme optimist and you believe that the Cowboys knew that was going to happen. Maybe, but nobody in the NFL really believed that. And that's why Dan Quinn is so important. And that's why his return is so important, because it was his vision that kind of led to Micah becoming that for the Cowboys. And so a unique grade in and of itself again. CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons falling to the Cowboys are not things that happen every single year, which takes us back to the stretch in question. The 5-year stretch, it's actually a 6-year stretch, but 5 players taken by the Cowboys. 2015, Byron Jones, kind of an sort of thing given the way it all worked out. Not totally the scouting department's fault because they're not the ones who coached him. Ezekiel Elliott, not a great utilization of resources. Taco Charlton, a complete and total miss just in every single way. That timer means it's time to end the video. Seriously, the sausage is getting made all over the place here. So appreciate you guys for being patient. 2018, Leighton, Vander, Esch, an sort of thing again. 2019, traded for Amari Cooper, so not exactly a fair evaluation. 20, CeeDee Lamb falls to them, not really in the plans, but they did adjust and adapt, so kudos to them. And then 2021, Micah Parsons, a unique evaluation again, but somebody who also fell to them. And so that goes back to the point what I was talking about earlier, where I don't necessarily think it's fair to say that they're just hitting home run after home run after home run in the first round. These are some weird things that have happened to them. The last, vision of success that they executed was Travis Frederick and Zach Martin. I know that's a weird way to put things, but ever since then, they've kind of been in this weird place. And that's not to say that Cowboys suck and they're terrible, the front office, blah, blah. It's just, it speaks to how wild and weird and wacky the NFL draft can be, and the NFL and life in general, as we've said throughout the entire video here today. So very anxious to see who the Cowboys are going to draft in the first round this year. The question whether or not they can draft talent, they can. And sometimes, like everything else, you need a little bit of luck for it to go your way. My name is RJ Ochoa. You know me from, of course, throughout the Blogging the Boys universe. And today here, while I had to send a message and my phone went off. But hey, when you do a video for 30 minutes, sometimes some weird stuff happens. All right. Thankfully, I got the dog in here. He didn't even bark. So it was a success in that regard. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at RJ Ochoa. If you need to hit me up on email, you can, rj.ochoa@sbnation.com. You can always leave a comment down here below. We'll get to those as well. We'll be having more videos coming out, obviously, in the lead up to the draft. We have some film reviews on players who we think the Cowboys could be in on. We, of course, have mock drafts coming out every single Monday, myself and Connor Livesey, for the uniquely titled mock Draft Monday series that we're doing here. We have our BTB roundtables every Tuesday, and we of course have shows coming out every single day on the Blogging the Boys podcast network. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. We'll see you next time.